A list celebrity Leo attended an art show, lavished praise on my painting, and even said he wanted to meet me privately. My bestie Nina was so jealous she went and claimed the painting was hers. What she didn't know is that the painting depicted a murder scene, and the killer was the very celebrity she was obsessed with. The school recently hosted an art exhibition, and my normally lazy best friend was unusually eager about it. She excitedly dragged me to sign up, but in the end, she didn't enter herself. When I asked her why, she took my hand reassuringly. We're both art teachers. If we both participate, who's going to teach our classes? Don't you worry. Go for it, and I'll cover for you. I thought Nina was just talking, but she actually showed up to teach my classes, and even dropped off my materials and assignments at my home. I was so touched that I had a spare key made for her. But when I finished my piece and came home early one day, I saw her wrapped around my boyfriend, their clothes a mess as they lay on my sofa. They didn't seem to hear the door open, moaning my name as they went at it. She's so easy to fool. In a few days, I'll drag her into some other competition and get her out of the way again. I felt sick to my stomach. Just looking at them was filthy. I texted my boyfriend that night and broke up with him. As for Nina, she didn't seem to know I'd found out. The next day, she greeted me with a smile. I heard you broke up? Why? I didn't call her out. I just smiled and pointed toward the buzzing crowd at the art show's entrance. I found someone much more interesting than that piece of trash. The girls in the crowd were all snapping pictures with their phones, and in the middle of it all stood a tall, slender man. He was staring intently at my painting. Oh my God! What is Leo doing here? Is he here for the art show too? He's a superstar. I can't believe he came here. Nina's jaw dropped. She was obsessed with Leo, had bought tons of his merch, and stayed up all night boosting his online rankings. Seeing her idol this close for the first time, she instantly forgot everything else. A few other teachers came over, buzzing with excitement. Wow. I can't believe he came to our little art show. He's been staring at that painting for a while. Who painted it? The painting was of a dark basement. A young girl was chained to the floor like an animal, her hand reaching toward a sliver of light. Leo stared at it for a long time before finally looking around. It seemed he was searching for the artist. I stood silently in place. A moment later, the organizer's voice came over the loudspeaker. Will the artist of submission number 006 please come to the conference room? Watching the staff lead Leo backstage, I stole a glance at Nina. Her gaze was sharp, fixed on the painting. Damn it, how did that bitch get so lucky? I pretended not to hear her curse and leaned in with a naive expression. Number 006 is so lucky. What number was I again? You're the one who registered for me. Nina paused for a second, a complex look on her face. I think you were number 003. A growing excitement lit up her eyes, and her voice trembled. Yeah, you're 003. I have to go, I've got something to do. I watched her retreating back, knowing full well where she was going. That night, the news that Leo, moved by a piece of art, was going to visit the artist's home spread like wildfire across the school. Everyone was green with envy. That artist is so lucky. She must be dying of happiness. I didn't know about happiness. But death? That was a certainty. Everyone was wondering why a superstar like him would be taken with such a painting. The reason was simple. The basement I painted was located right under his mansion. Just a few days ago, I was trailing a professional con woman. I was planning to take her back to my apartment for a proper dissection, but before I could make my move, someone else knocked her out first. I followed the tracker all the way to that basement and found Leo, fresh from a magazine shoot. He was still wearing a designer suit, his handsome face identical to how it looked on TV. But in the next second, he cut off the woman's hands without a moment's hesitation. His smooth, efficient movements made me gasp in admiration, but the sound gave me away. He tackled me, pinning me to the ground. For a second, I thought I was in some kind of romantic drama. Except for the sharp knife that was already piercing my arm. I realized just how dangerous a pretty face could be and scrambled to escape. I didn't know the layout of his house, so this was the only way to draw him out. That painting was a blatant provocation. I just never expected Nina to jump in the middle of it. But she was impersonating me. using my name and my address on the registration form. So when Leo came calling, he would naturally come to my place. Sure enough, Nina called me that night. She said she had to go out of town for a conference in a couple of days and asked if I could go in her place, since she had covered my classes for me. Of course, I agreed without hesitation, a cold smile on my face. Not only did she cover my classes, but she also took care of my lonely boyfriend. I definitely owed her one. It's just, my plants need watering, and since I just broke up with my boyfriend, I have no one to help. No problem. I have the key to your apartment. I'll go water them for you. Her voice was cheerful, but she had no idea that everyone in my apartment building was a murderer. The lawn outside was filled with countless buried body parts. From the moment she stepped inside, everyone was waiting for a good show. And of course, I didn't go to any conference. I bought snacks and drinks and settled into my neighbor's apartment, leisurely turning on the hidden cameras in my home. Nina walked into my place wearing a low-cut top, then started rummaging through my things, pulling out my makeup. She used it without a second thought, cursing me under her breath. Bitch. How can she afford such expensive makeup? She must be doing something shady on the side. Where else would she get the money for an apartment this nice? After finishing her makeup, she reluctantly walked to the balcony. Who do you think you are, making me water your flowers? After saying that, Nina suddenly lifted her hand and shoved the flower pot right off the balcony. So much easier. I'll just say the wind was strong. The pot shattered on the ground below, and someone immediately started shouting. Who the hell is throwing stuff downstairs? You got a death wish? I remembered this neighbor. He had a short fuse and was prone to fits of murderous rage. More than half of the dismembered bodies under the lawn were his handiwork. But Nina just glared down and shouted back. Do you know who I am? I could have you cancelled online with a snap of my fingers. Her usual gentle demeanor was gone, replaced by a vicious, snarling expression, like a rabid dog. When the neighbor below went silent, Nina looked like she'd won a great victory and strutted back inside. I watched her tilt her head high, calculating the time. A few moments later, the doorbell rang. Nina went to the door overjoyed, but her face paled when she saw who it was. What are you doing here? It wasn't Leo at the door, but a tall, thin man. My ex-boyfriend, her current one. Seeing the expanse of her cleavage and her tight miniskirt, the man's expression darkened. I can't be here? Who were you expecting? He barged into the room and saw the candlelight dinner on the table. His face grew even uglier. You have a date? Just a few days ago you were begging me to break up with her and be with you. And now you're seeing someone else? And you're dressed like that? Was your whole sweet girl act just a fake? Nina was speechless, standing guiltily by the door. What about you? What are you doing here? This is your ex-girlfriend's home. Don't tell me you came here to get back together with her? Watching this, I was genuinely moved. They finally remembered whose house this was. Alex was left sputtering. He had, in fact, come to get back together with me. After Nina came back from the art show, she had already started acting like she was an A-lister's girlfriend. Her attitude toward him had taken a nosedive. It only took a few days for Alex to start trying to win me back. I didn't say no, I just told him to come to my house at this specific time. As the old saying goes, when there's no drama to watch, you have to create your own. Watching them snarl at each other, I excitedly grabbed another handful of sunflower seeds. I had a pretty good idea why Nina targeted Alex in the first place. He was a big spender, often picking me up from school in a fancy car and showering me with expensive luxury gifts. What Nina didn't know was that because of all this, Alex was also arrogant, reckless, and even had a violent streak. The moment I saw him torturing a stray kitten on the street, I had already decided to break up with him. Otherwise, she never would have succeeded so easily. Now looking at the scene before him, even an idiot like Alex could figure out what was going on. He reached out, grabbed a handful of Nina's hair, and slammed her head onto the table. You threw yourself at me like you were glued on, and now you dare to cheat on me? Nina yelped in shock and instinctively fought back. Her nails scratched Alex's face. You dare to fight back? The two of them immediately started brawling. Nina's hair was a mess, her dress was torn, and she looked like a complete psycho. Seeing that they were both starting to get bruised and bloody, I put down my snacks and went out. Can't have them kill each other. That would spoil the show. I opened the door with my fingerprint. They both froze when they saw me. Nina was the first to react, quickly trying to smooth down her dress. Why are you back? Weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? The trip was postponed. I put on a shocked expression, covering my mouth. What are you doing in my house? And dressed like that? And what's with this table? Are those candles? Nina was at a complete loss, a bright red handprint on her cheek. She stammered out an explanation. My kitchen is broken, so I thought I'd cook a meal at your place. That's bullshit. Before she could finish, Alex stomped over, furious. Who's the random guy you were meeting here? Using someone else's house too. You really like to play games, don't you? I looked at the roses on the floor, and her barely there dress. It was obvious what she was planning. Alex finally saw her for who she was and suddenly grabbed my hand. When we were together, she came over to your house wearing a nightgown to seduce me. Nina's face turned beet red, unable to say a word. Alex looked at her with contempt and sneered. How desperate are you, having a date in someone else's house? What? Are you going to steal the house you live in too? Watching Nina's utter humiliation, I quickly pulled Alex back. That's enough. Any more, and I was going to burst out laughing. Seeing him being so blunt, Nina dropped the act. And you think you're so great? Didn't you come running the second I beckoned? You think you're the only one who's allowed to cheat? Watching them go at each other like rabid dogs was incredibly satisfying. But then an ill-timed sound came through my earpiece. Someone had entered the complex. I waved for Alex to leave, then walked straight to the balcony. Is this how you water my plants? Nina glared at me, no longer bothering to pretend. It's just a few stupid plants. I can pay you back 10 times over, can't I? I glanced at the roses by the door and decided to be direct with her. Did you have fun using my identity? She froze for a moment, then asked when I had found out. Around the time you registered for the art show. Or maybe, way before that, when you were secretly texting Alex. A flash of panic crossed Nina's face, but she still managed a cold smirk. It doesn't matter if you know now. Leo is already in love with me. Even if you hadn't lent me the apartment, I could have just waited for him downstairs. It's just a different name. I was so stunned by her stupidity that I almost applauded. What a classic switcheroo. Rushing to take my place in line for the slaughter. She crossed her arms and sat down. If you know what's good for you, maybe I'll throw you a bone after I become Mrs. A-lister. I was about to respond when the doorbell rang again. Nina didn't even look at me as she scurried to open the door. Leo stood at the entrance. His hair was messy but still looked good, and he was carrying a large bag. A chill ran down my spine. I'd seen that bag before, in the basement. It was filled with all sorts of tools. Nina, however, looked at it with delight. What's this? A gift for you. Leo walked in with a smile, pausing slightly when he saw me. And who is this? I met his cold gaze and quickly covered the wound on my arm. I'm the housekeeper. Here to clean and cook. Nina shot me a vicious glare, but finally relaxed when she heard my answer. Noticing that Leo's eyes kept lingering on me, she snapped. Well, get to the kitchen and make dinner. I quickly went into the kitchen, listening to them chat outside, still shaken from our brief encounter. Was the plan going to fail? Did he recognize me? Before I could get too nervous, I heard their conversation from the other room. I've been looking for you ever since we last met. The moment I saw that painting, I knew it was you. Leo's voice was light, but it sent shivers down my spine. So that painting, was it an invitation? But Nina was clearly confused, stumbling over her words. Of course. I couldn't forget you either. She then used the excuse of getting tea to rush into the kitchen and grab me by the hair. You bitch. Why didn't you tell me you'd met before? Luckily, he doesn't remember what you look like. Quick, tell me everything about how you met. Looking at her excited face, I recited the script I had prepared. We met in an abandoned basement. There was an injured stray cat. I was going to take it home, but he got to it first. That's it. Nina looked at me, her eyes filled with jealousy. Are you sure he didn't get a good look at your face? I shrugged, deadpan. Otherwise, do you really think you could have kept up this charade until now? She shot me another glare, then picked up the tea I had prepared and walked out. Leo stared at her like a predator. I haven't had a chance to ask, why were you in the basement that day? Nina feigned shyness and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Actually, I was there to rescue that poor injured kitten, but you beat me to it. Leo paused, then broke into a smile. A kitten? I like that description. Since you wanted to take it too, it seems we have similar tastes. Nina's smile widened, and she sidled closer to him. So, want to take me to your place to see the cat? No need. Leo suddenly pushed her away and slid the large bag toward her. I brought it to you. Think of it as a welcome gift. I sucked in a breath, my body tensing. Could the thing in that bag be? But Nina just looked smug as if she'd gotten one over on me. She gave me a triumphant little smirk and reached to open the bag. The next second, a terrified scream echoed through the room. What is this thing? Inside the gray bag was a perfectly preserved human head. Because Nina had leaned in so close, the bag's zipper got tangled in her hair. As she scrambled backward in a panic, she dragged the head out with her, sending it tumbling into her lap. Leo let out a surprised gasp, then couldn't help but laugh. I had no idea you'd like it this much. Nina sat on the floor, cradling the head, completely catatonic. When I came out, I saw her mouth agape, unable to make a sound, a foul-smelling puddle spreading between her legs. Leo ignored her completely, pulling out more tools from his bag. I didn't expect such a warm welcome. I'll be sure to treat you well. He stood up and looked down at the trembling, pathetic mess that was Nina. Where would you like us to begin? Nina snapped back to reality and scrambled madly for the door, but he grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back. With a swift kick to her lower back, Leo sent her sprawling. Why are you running? Weren't you the one who provoked me with that painting? Nina retched from the kick, crying and begging on her knees. I don't know what you're talking about. Please stop hitting me. You don't know? Leo sneered, his handsome features now twisted into a cold mask. Didn't you want to kill that woman too? That's why you followed me to the basement. Why are you so scared now? Hearing his words, it finally clicked for Nina. She whipped her head around to look at me. No, that wasn't me. I'm an imposter. I didn't paint that picture. The person you're looking for is her. She lunged toward me but was caught mid-stride by Leo. Still playing games, are we? I had witnessed his methods before, but seeing Nina get kicked against the wall like a side of beef still made me suck in a breath. Good thing I didn't try to fight him head-on. Leo was vicious. After watching her slump to the floor, he slowly turned his gaze to me. I was so busy dealing with her, I forgot to kill you. I quickly raised my hands in surrender. I'm just a housekeeper. I won't say anything, I swear. But his eyes seemed to bore right through me. He suddenly walked over, grabbed my arm, and yanked at my sleeve. He even ripped off the blood-stained bandage underneath. It really is you. Leo stared at me, his grip slowly loosening. I gave a helpless shrug. You found me out. But it looks like you're a little too late. He looked at me in shock, but before he could say anything, he collapsed. I had drugged the tea. The effects were just kicking in. Watching him slump to the floor, I pulled a rope from the cabinet and tied him up in a rather creative fashion. Nina wailed as she crawled to her feet, staring blankly at the scene. What the hell is going on? You're both insane. I turned and gave her a cold glance. You're right. Your idol and I are not exactly normal. So you can still run, if you're fast enough. The door was already unlocked. I turned to go to the bedroom to get my tools. Whether Nina ran or not didn't matter to me. I had already figured out the superstar's habits. He drove a car registered under someone else's name, and his itinerary was a secret even from his manager when he came here. As for an alibi, I was the one the A-lister had originally invited. She was just here to help water the plants. Soon, she shakily got to her feet and even leaned in to look at the head on the floor. It's real. You really killed someone. I'm calling the police. But I had already taken her phone. Nina stumbled pathetically toward the door, only to run smack into someone. She screamed, terrified, and grabbed the person's arm. Help me. There's a murderer in here. But in the next second, the person grabbed her by the shoulders and slapped her hard across the face. You're the one who threw the flower pot, aren't you? Before Nina could even process what was happening, He grabbed her by the hair and slapped her again. The man was furious, jabbing a finger in her face. Weren't you going to cancel me online? Go on, try it. Nina's cheeks were already swollen, and now her nose was bleeding. She knelt on the floor, pathetically begging for mercy. I'm sorry, sir. Please stop hitting me. Please just call the police first. At that, the man finally stopped and glanced at me. When he spotted the head on the floor, he gasped. Chloe, you're too much. How could you have a murder party and not invite me? I smiled, picked up the head, and tossed it to him. It's yours. Go make some soup. He grinned at that, wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth, and quickly took it. Before leaving, he didn't forget to give Nina another kick in the face. I looked over. She was completely catatonic, just sitting there in a daze. You're all insane, you're all freaks. She kept muttering, like she had lost her mind. I couldn't be bothered with her anymore, and went back to the kitchen to sharpen my knives. Even if she ran, she wouldn't make it out of this apartment building. Best case scenario, she'd get a quick, clean death and end up as someone's dinner. Worst case, she'd be tortured slowly until the pain killed her. I was pondering which outcome was more likely when I came out, and saw the room was empty. What I hadn't expected was this. The ropes that had bound Leo were tossed on the floor. He was gone without a trace. Realizing something was wrong, I immediately sent a message to the building's group chat. But there was no sign of either of them in the entire complex. Instead, the fence at the side gate had been broken, leaving a large hole. The security footage showed Nina leading Leo to this spot, and they escaped together. I watched her cling tightly to the man's arm, and couldn't help but click my tongue. To still be this into your idol after finding out he's a serial killer. That's a true fan. The security guard asked if I wanted to go after them, but I waved him off. Of course, I knew where to find them. After all, we're colleagues. I immediately opened my phone, posted my painting and Leo's invitation to my social media feed. The next day, I went to work as usual and, sure enough, saw Nina at her desk, her face a mask of rage. When she saw me, she ground her teeth and walked over. You actually dare to show your face here? I smiled and gestured to the people whispering behind me. You dare to be here, so why shouldn't I? Thanks to my social media post, everyone now knew I was the one the superstar had originally invited. People started coming up to me to complain. Oh my God, Chloe, that lucky person was you. Nina was going around telling everyone it was her. What a liar. I know, right? So desperate for attention. Impersonating you without any shame. The rumors grew until the principal had to call Nina into his office. But she showed no remorse and quit on the spot. No one expected that. She started parading around the school, bragging to anyone who would listen that she didn't care about the painting anyway, since she was going to be a trophy wife. When people questioned her, she'd loudly declare, without a hint of shame, it doesn't matter who that painting was for. The one Leo likes is me. We've already moved in together, and we're going public soon. Just you wait and see. As she spoke, she walked up to me and deliberately dangled a house key. I couldn't be bothered to respond, but then I heard her next words. I already know your secret. Everyone in that apartment building of yours, they're all murderers, aren't they? I stopped and turned to look at her. You let Leo go on purpose that day? Do you have any idea what kind of person he is? She sneered, looking me up and down. So what? He told me everything. He does it to serve justice. Isn't that better than a psycho like you? For a moment, I was speechless. Looking at her smug face, I could only sigh. So you're going to help him? That's right. Nina took a few steps closer and suddenly shoved a note into my hand. If you don't want your entire apartment building to be reported, you'll come to this address. Alone. The address on it was very familiar. It was Leo's basement. Are you sure you want to help him? I looked at her, suddenly remembering what Leo had said to me in the kitchen. After he confirmed it was me, he had suddenly wrapped his arms around my waist. I finally found you. So did I pass your test? That was from our first fight in the basement. He had pinned me to the ground, smiling, and said he'd been waiting for me for a long time. He also said he had discovered the secret of our apartment building long ago, and that I was the one he found most interesting. So he deliberately snatched the prey I had been stalking to force me to reveal myself. To escape, I had blurted out a bluff. "You're not good enough to get into our building." So he had interpreted our back and forth as some kind of test. Even as he collapsed from the drug, he managed to force a smile. "Are you still not satisfied with me? How about I kill her as a gift for you?" It was obvious who her was. It was a shame the lamb had been placed on the dining table, still thinking she was the guest of honor. I looked at the time on the note and forwarded it to the apartment group chat. Time for a costume party. Everyone come to this address at the specified time. That night, I showed up with a taxi driver, a street cleaner, a window washer, and a gas inspector. This was my second time in Leo's mansion. The living room lights were on, the table was covered with roses and a candlelight dinner, and elegant music played in the background. Leo, dressed in a suit, looked at me, holding a knife and fork. "You're finally here." Before I could speak, a delicate voice came from behind me. "You must have been waiting for a long time, darling." Nina, wearing a gorgeous gown, was shivering in the dead of winter. Her face contorted from the cold, but she still held her head high as she ran forward. "I tricked this bitch into coming here for you. You can deal with her properly now." She linked her arm through Leo's and looked at the table in delight. "You even prepared a candlelight dinner for me. I have to post this on social media so all those jealous bitches who doubted me can see." She was about to take out her phone when Leo suddenly grabbed her arm and, with a gentle lift, placed her right on the table. "Not so fast. The main event hasn't started yet." Leo turned his head, his gaze deep and dark. Then he suddenly slammed Nina down onto the table. Before she could even react, she heard the man's low voice. "I discovered my particular hobby 7 years ago. I love the feeling of inflicting pain, but I couldn't bear the thought of doing such things to my own kind. Then one day, I read online about a drunk driver who got away with a hit and run. The facts were clear, but he was acquitted." As Leo spoke, he slowly poured a glass of red wine. Everyone was talking about it that day. It even bumped me off the top of the trending topics. I saw everyone's anger, their resentment. I frowned, guessing what he was about to say. "So he became the first person you killed?" He nodded and continued. "From that day on, I fell in love with the feeling of punishing bad people. I started looking everywhere for wicked people who defied morality." As he spoke, Leo handed the wine glass to Nina, including those two-faced, backstabbing hypocrites. I knew what he was planning and quickly stepped forward to interrupt. "But these people only violated a moral code. You don't have the right to punish them." The moment I finished, Nina shot me a glare. "What do you know? Those people are rotten to the core. Killing them is just serving justice." Hearing this, Leo turned his head in delight. "Do you really think so?" "Of course." Nina looked shyly at him and raised her glass. "After all, I'm the only one who understands you." Watching her drain the glass in one gulp, Leo mercilessly pulled out a scalpel and stabbed it directly into her hand. "Thank you for your understanding. Now you can die." The tip of the knife pierced her skin with a soft thunk, and blood instantly began to well up. Nina's eyes widened in horror, her mouth reacting before her brain could. My hand." She twisted her body, trying to escape, but found she was completely limp, unable to muster any strength. Leo smiled and leaned down, twisting the handle of the scalpel. "I'm so glad you support my work. I'll be sure to have a good time with you." It was only then that Nina understood. She looked in horror at the empty wine glass. "You drugged my wine? I helped you, and you tried to harm me." Leo looked at her naive expression, blinked, and then threw his head back and laughed. "Harm you? Why would I harm you? This was all prepared for you from the very beginning. It's just..." His well-practiced, charming eyes suddenly filled with disgust and contempt. "It's just that you were never the guest of honor at this party. You were the main course." He listened with satisfaction to her screams, then turned to me and gave a gentleman's bow. "So Chloe, are you satisfied with my gift?" I looked at Nina's shocked eyes and started laughing too. "Yes, I certainly am. After all, I'm no saint myself. A disgusting friend who steals my boyfriend and tries to steal my life? If someone else wants to kill her for me, I couldn't be happier." Nina wailed as she fell off the table, clutching her arm as she scrambled for the exit. Leo turned to grab her, but she shoved him away with surprising force. "This woman is surprisingly strong." He frowned, but in the next second I pulled him back. And you call that trying to kill someone? Watch and learn. I clapped my hands, and a taxi waiting at the curb immediately pulled up. Nina scrambled into the car like a madwoman, but the driver immediately locked the doors. Then he pulled out a wrench from under the seat. I heard a dull thud, and Nina was dragged back inside. Blood was seeping from her forehead, but she wasn't giving up. She screamed at me. You dare kill me? Everyone at school knows I'm here with you. A jolt of alarm went through me. Even though no one believed her, Nina had indeed spread that rumor everywhere. Even if it was fake, the police might very well trace it here. But in the next second, Leo held up his phone. Oh really? Then what do you call this? On the screen was his social media page. He had posted a legal notice about being slandered and stalked by a fan. He'd posted it before this little dinner party had even started. Looking at Nina's despairing face, he smiled and patted my shoulder. So, Chloe, am I still not good enough? I was about to answer when I saw Nina pull a keychain from her pocket and press a button on it. Instantly, a piercing alarm began to shriek. Damn it. It's a personal emergency alarm. You dare touch me now? I've already called the police. She grabbed a fork from the table and backed against the door, holding it like a weapon. A moment later, a knock came at the door. Hello, police. They're actually here. Leo exclaimed. Nina looked like she'd seen a savior. She threw herself at the door, pulled it open, and collapsed into the arms of the police officer. But in the next second, the officer pulled out a handkerchief and pressed it over her mouth. A moment later, her body went limp and crumpled to the floor. I couldn't help but click my tongue. I waved the fake cop inside and looked at Leo. See, you're still too green. Take notes. For every move you make, I'm 10 steps ahead. He looked embarrassed for a moment, but then caught the meaning behind my words. Does this mean you're letting me join you? I nodded, looking down at the finally unconscious Nina, analyzing the most interesting way to torture her. Leo was ecstatic, following closely behind me. So, how does your apartment building dispose of the bodies? Dismemberment, or bury them in the lawn, I answered casually. What about security cameras? He asked. Naturally, we replaced the footage with a new loop and just changed the time, I said as I helped stuff Nina into a bag. And where do you keep your tools of the trade? In a warehouse, or under the bed? As I spoke, I had my crew lift the sack. We were just about to leave when I heard the sound of sirens outside. And a voice from behind us. Don't move. Leo slowly walked over to block our path, then held up a recording pen. The moment he pressed play, my voice answering his questions filled the air. I've already called the police. Your entire apartment building is suspected of murder and hiding bodies. You can all wait to be arrested. I blinked, looking at him in a bit of a daze. You're planning to arrest us? He nodded. When did you decide this? Was this whole thing a setup? He paused, then shook his head. At first, I was genuinely interested in you all. And what I said earlier was true. I really do enjoy this kind of vigilante justice. I tilted my head, curious. He continued. But today, I suddenly had a change of heart. Leo's handsome face was filled with excitement. If I can round up all of you and hand you over to the police, isn't that an even greater act of justice? I was silent for a moment. He kind of had a point. But then what was all that talk before? At this, he fell silent too. After a long pause, he coughed. Let's just say, you're all very unlucky. This was indeed quite unlucky. If those were real cops outside. In the next second, I walked straight to the door and pulled it open. Outside, sitting in his car, was the security guard, holding a megaphone that was blasting a siren sound effect. Leo's body went rigid. He froze in place. What is this? I sighed and walked over to pat his shoulder. I told you you're too green. Did you really think I'd only use a trick once? The real police had been called away by our people on a different pretext long ago. I just didn't expect to flush him out so quickly. Leo's face went pale. He stood there stunned for a long moment before slumping to the floor in defeat. I lost again. I nodded and gave a wave of my hand. Two people immediately grabbed him, holding an electric stun baton to his neck. Just do what you have to do. Leo closed his eyes, showing no fear. I gasped and quickly pried his beautiful, almond-shaped eyes open. Why would I kill you? You're so handsome, so talented. My offer for you to join us still stands. He blinked in shock, but was promptly dragged back to my apartment. As for whether he'd get any other ideas in the future, well, there's not much to be afraid of once you're inside the apartment building. Later, Nina's screams echoed for a long, long time. They went from curses to pleas, until she was too weak to even speak. Eventually, she became fertilizer for the front lawn. The police, faced with her half-true, half-false statements, could never find any useful leads. In the end, the case was dropped. As for Leo, he moved into the apartment building. But it would probably take some time to properly train him. With that chapter closed, I took the opportunity to go on my annual vacation to relax. But while I was trying to relax at an Airbnb, I kept hearing the sounds of strenuous activity from the room next door. I went over and knocked on the door, only to hear a sharp voice from inside. Oh, how embarrassing. But that night, I learned that phrase was a verb, because someone really did dump a dead body into my room. I have no way to defend myself. Now what do I do? The end.